Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Ryan. Today we're going to be trying something from King's Family Distillery, and this is actually going to be a really nice segue into talking about a category of whiskey that's sort of, I think, maybe flying under the radar a bit. And I think it might have something to do with the name, which is kind of misleading, right? So this is a genre of whiskey called American Light Whiskey, okay? ALWs, American Light Whiskeys. And I want to kind of unpack what an American Light Whiskey is and sort of shatter some preconceptions people have about that genre as we taste King's Family Distillery's American Light Whiskey. This is 15 years old. It's 134.9 proof. So you notice a couple things there. It's old. It's high proof. And that's what I want to talk about a bit before we taste this. But I'm going to go ahead and pour it, let it open up. Big shout out to Karma Brady, who's in our Discord community, who sent me a sample of this because he loves King's Family Distillery. I tried their Rye Conic, which is their rye whiskey. It's a high corn mash rye whiskey finished. This one was at least finished in honey barrels. It was phenomenal. It's delicious. So I'm already impressed, and I want to see more about what they're offering. And this is a really interesting product for us to try today. I'll pour it. Let's chat about American Light Whiskeys. All right, American Light Whiskeys. Let's talk about it. I think the name is misleading because in America we have light beers. You know, for a lot of us, like getting into whiskey, our stepping stones to get there might have been things like cocktails, craft beer culture, etc. And I think that if that was your journey, like mine was, started out with craft beer, then on to cocktails, then into whiskeys, then we have this negative preconception towards anything that might be labeled light because we were sort of trained that light means it's sacrificing in flavor and quality, and it's you can mass produce it, it's cheaper, it's weaker, and it just sort of is a lawnmower kind of a situation, right? It's my lawnmower beer, it's my light beer. I think the name itself is a little bit misleading in that regard, but American Light Whiskey is not at all like that. So think of American Light Whiskey as sort of like a hybrid between American whiskeys and Scotch whiskeys. You think of Scotch whiskeys, one of the biggest differences immediately, you look at your shelf and you're like, I've got this bourbon that's 6 years old and it's delicious, it's perfect. I've got this Scotch that's 18 years old. That's the high shelf offering of this brand. And so the age is very different. The color is very different. And with American Light Whiskeys, it's similar because what they're essentially doing with American Light Whiskeys is you take an American whiskey, but instead of aging it in a brand new charred oak barrel, which is what we have to do in order to call it a bourbon, in order to call it a rye, a wheated whiskey, American whiskeys in general, they have to be aged in brand new charred oak barrels. Boom. American Light Whiskey says, nah. Take your same distillate, and then you can put it in a used barrel. You can use an uncharred oak barrel as well. So it could be used or not charred. And then they also are distilled to really high proofs, and they're aged for a very long time. So, for example, this one from King's Family Distillery, courtesy of Kara and Justin King, this one is 15 years old. But you'll notice it's a 15-year-old American whiskey, but it's very light in color. But it's not light in proof. Like I said, 134.9. So it's very high. It's bordering hazmat whiskey at that point. This one happens to have been finished in a toasted barrel after that as well for additional flavoring. But some of their American Light Whiskeys are not finished in toasted barrels. So it just depends on which bottle you get. So for some of you, you may have been introduced to American Light Whiskeys via Penelope, for example, which I think they had like a 15-year American Light Whiskey as well. So that may have been your introduction into the genre. But we're going to dive in here, we're going to nose this, taste it, and we're going to see if this American Light Whiskey is any good and maybe worth keeping an eye out for. Now, real quick, what you're going to pay for this depends, I think, on which bottle you're getting specifically, because they've done, this is a single barrel, so I think it depends on the barrel and what they've done with it. So if it's finished, if it's not finished, the price point may vary. But in general, if you're looking for a King's Family Distillery American Light Whiskey, you're probably looking at anywhere between $120 and $150 that you're going to have to pay for it. So it's not a super cheap thing, but again, they had to sit on the barrel for 15 years before they could, monetize it. And even then, they're not proofing it down. So they got to make their money back on it. So that's why the price is what it is. Now, the nose on this is very sweet, confectionery. The first thing that actually comes to mind is like baklava. You know, that flaky dough and the honey, the thick honey in there. Maybe the presence of some crumbled up walnuts. So if you got any Greece or Turkey in your personal heritage, you may have had baklava before. And that's kind of what I'm reminded of on the nose, is that flaky phyllo dough, honey, crushed up nuts. It's very light, very sweet. On the nose alone, I may have guessed that this was a Canadian whiskey of some kind. Maybe even like a Found North blend of some kind. But again, this is not a blend, it is a single barrel. But fairly strong ethanol vibes as well. But yes, very, very sweet on the nose. Let's try it, see if it's any good. Cheers. Man, on that sip, any similarities that this had on the nose with a Canadian blend is gone. Like, it's completely out of my mind now. It is very hot. I mean, there's no way around it. 134.9 proof is a lot of proof. But here we're blending the hotness of just the ABV with the sweetness that we're getting on the distillate itself. So we have a lot less oak spice because we don't have that new charred oak barrel. We're not getting all that spice. I'm just getting some lightly toasted cinnamon. And I think that's probably coming from the toasted barrel finish. A little bit of toasted cinnamon, like a cinnamon and sugar, on a slice of toast that's been lightly buttered, right? That's kind of more where my head goes. Yeah, it's not sweet and spicy, it's sweet and hot, right? Hot from the ABV. Yeah, the more the finish sits there, the more that toasted barrel influence comes in. It reminds me of like the toasted Penelope right there, or even the honey toasted barrel finish of the New Holland Dragon's Milk. It's like I'm used to having a lot more oak on the palate, and because it's a light whiskey and it hasn't been in that new charred oak barrel, I'm getting a lot less of that spiciness from the oak. Just that lightly toasted cinnamon and a whole lot of that honey and those crushed up nuts. It's really strange to have those delicate flavors on something that's so hot. It's a really unique thing, isn't it? Yeah, I'm not too sure what I was expecting, but it wasn't really that. We're not getting those butterscotch and rich caramels and molasses that we often get on older American whiskeys. And we're not getting the peppery oak, the spicy oak, and those deep vanillas that come from all those trips into the red layer and out, and those vanillins being created as the lignins break down. It's just the whole chemistry of what's in here is so dramatically different than what I am, acclimated to. It's nothing super assertive in that regard, but it is still really hot. And a nice long finish on it, though. So should American light whiskeys be on your radar? Honestly, I don't know. I'm going to need to drink more American light whiskey before I can sort of come to a conclusion about how I feel about the genre as a whole. But I definitely applaud, pushing into new spaces, trying new things, being creative, being innovative. And I think American light whiskey, this right here at least, breaks the mold. It is innovative. It's an attempt to sort of color outside of the lines, and they made something that really works. Is it something that you're going to love and appreciate? I have no idea. I really don't know what your palate's like and what your preferences are. For me, I think I am willing, after this sip, to try more American light whiskey and kind of feel it out a bit, feel the genre out a bit. It has earned itself a second pour. So if I was to give this a score per my scale, it's tough because it's hard to have a frame of reference. If I haven't had a lot of American light whiskey, I don't really know what my expectations are for an American light whiskey yet. You know what I mean? But I feel like I gotta give this a score per my scale as I understand the genre right now, as I understand it today, and as I appreciate it today. So for that reason, my score may be subject to change. But considering the sip, how I enjoyed it, what it is, what it's supposed to be, the age and the price point, all of that stuff being, all of those are factors in this score. I think where I would land on this would be probably a 7.1. I think that's where I'd land, 7.1, because I think it's really good. But I'm still trying to feel it out a bit. You know what I mean? I would be hard-pressed to rate it above that and give you a strong recommendation like, yes, you need to go out there and buy an American light whiskey today. I think you need to try the genre, kind of like I'm doing. Kind of wade into those waters a little bit, kind of get our feet wet, and see how it feels before we full send and go dive off the dock. Maybe a flat 7. We'll give it a flat 7. I don't want to give it a 6s because I feel like that's not giving it enough credit. But I don't want to go too high with it either because I don't want to give it more credit than I'm willing to just yet. Sound good? 7.0. Let's land on that. Thanks so much, Karma Brady. I appreciate you for sharing this with me. Actually, I think it probably has a lot to do with my palate and what I like. I mean, I love rye whiskeys, but that rye conic of King's Family, that was delicious. That, I think I'd be more willing right now, if I was on their website doing some shopping, I think right now I'd be more willing to pull the trigger on the rye conic than this. And it's not because this is bad, but it's because I know what to expect out of a rye, and I really liked that one. So thanks so much for watching the video today. I appreciate each and every one of you. If you are familiar with the American light whiskey category and you've had a bunch of them and you sort of know what to expect, hey, offer some of your thoughts down below. If you've tried it at all, even if you've only had one pour, let us know what your experience was like and how you felt about that genre of whiskey yourself and your own experience too. Big shout out to my Patreon supporters who help fund the bottles that we get to pick up and review here on the channel each and every month. Really appreciate each and every one of you. Cheers, my friends. May you live richly and get better with age. And I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.